Hello. It's very hot today. There's also a soccer game going on in the background, so it might be noisy. Continuing the Bhagavad Gita, Chapter 1, verses 37 to 43. By the way, this is the version of the Bhagavad Gita that's being used. It's called the Song of the Blessed One. If you look it up, it should be available. You can look in the Mystery School website and it'll show you where it is. Here we go. Even if they do not see, overpowered by greed in their hearts, that killing a relative or attacking a friend are wrong acts, why should we not know that these are wrong acts? Would not the destruction of a dynasty be a criminal act if done by those who can see the evil of it, Krishna? The destruction of a dynasty destroys the ways of that society. It disrupts the eternal religion, and all the families are warped by unlawful activities and decadence. When decadence has taken place, Krishna, do not families become unhealthy? Women of the families become polluted and produce unwanted children. These unwanted children create a lawless society, destroy families. And if the family falls apart, then offerings of food and water to the ancestors stop being performed. Such flawed people, the destroyers of society and unwanted children that they create, will devastate social laws and family laws forever. Krishna, I have heard from the priests that men who ruin the family ways will reside forever in hell. So sometimes these verses are used by conservatives in different Hindu movements to actually uphold the family laws, which is, I think, fairly ironic because, of course, it's not Krishna who's teaching this. It's Arjuna. And Krishna will go on to tell him that his argument is poppycock. He, like Jesus, is saying that there are things much more important than these social constructions that we have about family and propriety and all of those sorts of things. Of course, India, like most ancient lands, was, by our standards, very, very socially conservative. And Krishna was certainly not someone that would have been thought in his own time as fitting the orthodoxy of this, you know. Just like the Buddha, just like Jesus, any of these teachers were people that broke the social rules because they were saying that these social rules are actually part of the fabric of illusion that prevents you from accessing reality directly. Now, it's very interesting, the evolution of Arjuna's argument, because you might remember in the last video, Arjuna was making arguments from a personal level. He was making these arguments about how he doesn't want to do this, how he doesn't want to kill his brothers, his grandfathers, etc. He doesn't want to go through that suffering. He's afraid of what's going to happen on the level of he himself. Now he suddenly switched tactics. This is a very interesting progression in how one goes about justifying one's unconsciousness, one's ego control. Because at first, the first visceral reaction is just this, I don't want to do this, right? And then he starts thinking of reasons. And the reasons first, he thinks, well, I don't want to because it's not going to be good for me. But now he's jumped into this other level of this web, this network of illusion. And he's saying, well, it's not just about me. If it was me, that would be something else. But it's society. We can't possibly do this for the sake of the children. It'll create these unwanted children. It'll create this social chaos. That's why it can't be done. It's not about just my problem. I'm thinking of society here. So really, the first verses, the previous ones I talked about in the former video, were at least more honest because he was talking out of this profound emotional reaction of his own fear. Now the intellect has taken over and he's made an intellectual argument about the greater good, about society, and how this has to be protected, and so he can't possibly do this. Before, it was his own ego that was just telling him, you won't be happy, you won't get what you want if you do this fight. It won't be how you imagine things should go. But Arjuna would have realized in his mind how childish his argument sounded within his own spirit. And so at that moment, you have a choice. You can either say, okay, wait, I'm wrong. Or you can double down and find a more sophisticated excuse. And that's what he did. He moved on to this philosophical kind of argument about society, about religion, about values. And suddenly his ego has managed to convince him that it's not really about him at all. It's not just his own unwillingness to accept reality for what it is and do what his will demands. Instead, the ego has convinced Arjuna that he's taking an honorable, moral, and religious stance by refusing to fight this evil. And the ego works this way in pretty much everyone. First, you'll react with your real fear, your real visceral, conditioned instinct to reject change, to reject, doing what must be done. But very quickly, it'll jump on to these more complex, convoluted sort of excuses to false ideas about morality, about philosophy, about religion, about politics, and you'll start quoting scripture and dogma and law and everything else to try to convince yourself and others that what you're doing or you're failing to do is actually the right thing, and not just right thing, but the proper and altruistic thing, and that you're not really being selfish or self-referencing or self-centered by doing this, but that you're actually trying to do something noble in not changing. So this is a very interesting commentary, and it comes out of the priests. The last line in this quotation is that Krishna, I have heard from the priests that men that ruin the family ways will reside forever in hell. This kind of concept for maintaining social control exists so that we don't do our will, so that we fit into this system that allows for a stable society, which you can understand. I'm not going to jump out to say, down with everything. It's not about anarchy, but it's about being able to realize what the system is. The system, the control concept, is a situation where the society needs to put limits on its own growth and its own change, and especially in certain venues. And so they create, as means of social control, these concepts and values. And they've always been reinforced, on the one hand, by the swords of the law keepers and the kings, but on the other hand, and much more effectively, by the threats of damnation on the parts of priests. And Krishna, as you're going to see, is about to tell him that this is all nonsense, that in fact he's dirtying himself by buying into this conditioning and knowing that he has this deeper will, not following through on it. That's it for this time.